What's up, everybody? Welcome back for another episode of the Ozark podcast. You've got Kyle Veit on the mic as always, and I am joined today by my co-host of the show and good buddy, Kyle Plunkett. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
We got up early this morning and drove from Bentonville to come do a little bit of fishing and hang out with Mr. Duane Hada here.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to the morning.
Yeah, so without further ado, that brings us to our guest. We have the privilege of being with fly fishing legend and owner of Rivertown Gallery, Mr. Duane Hada.
Well, great to be here, guys. I know it's an early morning start for you, but thank you.
Yeah, we got on the road about 7 this morning and 2.5 hour drive, not too far.
Yeah.
Pretty enough. It's spring, dogwoods are blooming.
You do it for turkey hunting or anything else. So
Exactly. So we're happy to be here. Your gallery, for anyone who's just listened to the podcast, you won't be able to see it, but if you go to our Patreon, you can actually see the video of the gallery around here. And we were just walking through. You gave us a tour. Absolutely stunning. Some of the pieces of work you've done.
Thank you.
Especially the fish painting. What do you call it? The Japanese?
It's an art form called jitako.
Yeah.
It's fish printing, basically.
Okay. Yeah. Just blown away by the craftsmanship that you have here, and just really cool. So definitely make sure you watch the video on our Patreon. It's worth the watch. But with that kind of out of the way, I was thinking about the intro to how to introduce you to our audience, and there's really not one word to kind of sum you up. There's a lot of different things. What are you working on?
Got
here,
it.
Kyle?
Sorry. This is my in-ears.
Okay.
You're good. Go ahead. You can restart that.
Yeah. So thinking about your intro, there was a lot of different things that you've done in your career, and a lot of different things. And there's not one word to really describe you. You're kind of a guy who wears a lot of hats. And so I was going through, and I just started writing some of them down. You're a landscape and wildlife artist. You're passionate outdoorsman, fly fisherman, guide, educator, mentor, book illustrator, philanthropist. I mean, there's a lot that you've done.
You've got to do a lot of things here in the Ozarks if you're going to make a living.
Yeah.
You got to stay diversified anyway. But,
Absolutely. How do you keep up with it all? I mean, what's driven you to do all those things and be so busy?
It's a lot of passion. Everything I do in life is driven by passion, I think. So if I don't love it, I don't do it. But I've been blessed to have artistic talent anyway, and it's something I've worked hard at developing and trying to make a livelihood out of it, and it has worked well for me. I've been very blessed in that way, but it just keeps opening into new ventures, and I have to edit some of them out. You can't do everything.
Right.
I like to do rod building, but who has the time for that?
Yeah,
So,
that's like one more thing.
Yeah,
you got to cut the line somewhere.
Right. But what I'm doing is definitely driven by passion, and I'm a firm believer you do, as far as from painting standpoint, you paint best what you know best. And so, you can look around my gallery and you're going to see the things that drive me. It's paintings of the Ozarks, it's things of the fish, the fauna, the outdoor experience anyway. So that's you're not going to see a lot of vases of wildflowers sitting around,
right.
But not against painting that. And if I do, it's going to have some some Ozark dogwood in there or something like that. Exactly. So there's beauty all out there in this wonderful landscape I've been blessed to grow up and live in, and that's what I paint. Paint what I know, paint what I see, paint what is my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that brings me to exactly where I wanted to go next, which is just talk to me about a little bit about like your background, where you grew up, how you grew up, maybe even a little bit about like, obviously as an artist, I think, you don't just get that. I mean, you have that talent, but is it like were your parents artists?
You have to develop. There are actually quite a few artists on both my dad and my mom's side of the family. So I think there is somewhat of a genetic trait there somewhat, but people always say, oh, you were born with talent, and I kind of grimace a little bit. I look at my drawings. My mom still has a drawer full of 5 and 6 year old, and they're not bad for the average 5 and 6 year old. Yeah. So I think I've been more of an observant person, and I can remember back at the early age just a desire to try to copy something down and make it look like it. So there's a lot of trial and error, but encouragement and being around other people that fostered that, I think lit that flame and kind of, but I didn't, the small rural schools I went to, I'm one of the you're here in Mountain Home, Arkansas. There's very few native people. I'm not a native of Mountain Home. I was over here in Sansing Hollow, which is about another 30 miles as the crow flies through over towards Bergman in that area over on Crooked Creek. Is where I grew up anyway. But the small rural schools, I went to Bergman small school at that time, and there wasn't any art that was offered. So I was that kid that would always turn his test over at the end and try to draw a picture on it to impress the teacher to improve my grade and that kind of thing. But there was a lot of frustration with my art that I just didn't have the training. So there's a lot of unfinished pieces because I'd get frustrated and I just didn't, it wasn't until I went to college that I actually took a basic drawing class. And it all came together for me. I was like, it made sense. And I knew quickly it was just putting gas to the fire for me. And that's where I think I really made my big leap as far as understanding that this was one of the things in life that I could do and wanted to do and pursue. But anyway, I grew up, you're kind of alluding to my past. I am blessed. We're not native, one of the families of Boone and Newton County, but that's where my dad settled. He came to this area as a church planter, okay? He was a rural minister. And he said when he graduated from preaching school, they call it back then, they handed him his diploma and said, Africa or the Ozarks, which way you headed? And he said, well, I didn't know. He said, I knew where Africa was, I didn't know where the Ozarks were. He was a Western Oklahoma boy anyway. So he said, I'll give that a try. And that made all the difference. And what a wonderful way to grow up, a very rural area. I'm one of the few people, I guess I just turned 60 years old this year, but growing up where I did, we had a spring as our water source. There's very few people my age. Now, the generation before me, that was a common thing. But so it was, it was very humble, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. I used to be kind of ashamed of it when I was younger, but now I'm like very proud of it. It made me who I am today anyway. And the just growing up with a lot of outdoor opportunities. Crooked Creek, I literally could ride my bike. It was a long ride, but that didn't bother me back then. Kids did that, People,
nothing else to do, maybe.
Exactly. So I'd spend all day down on Crooked Creek, chasing the smallmouth bass and the sunfish and all different things, and just roaming the hills and hollows and the woods, and just a wild child, And so that I really that's something we're kind of losing, and we'll probably talk later on this. The outdoors is a great place to grow up as a kid, and it teaches you all the life skills that you'll need. It's all out there. It's a beautiful thing. So the Ozarks have been I've traveled everywhere and been blessed to have done that through the gift of fly fishing and travel and all that. But the Ozarks are home and near and dear to me, and it's an amazing, beautiful part of the world, and I'm very blessed to have grown up in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about my childhood, and I was fortunate enough to grow up in the Ozarks as well, and just the lessons you learn from being out in the woods, and I think about when I was like 5 to about 10 years old, basically, just the amount of discovery that you get as you're going through the woods and you're playing in the creeks and you flip over a rock and there's a crawdad and then you see that swim off and then a fish eats it. It's just like you see the whole ecosystem at work. And I wonder for you, is there a moment or an age of your childhood that you remember that like, man, this all kind of clicked, or like this is when I fell in love with the Ozarks?
There's a videotape in my brain of my brother and I got invited to go celebrate a birthday party with one of our classmates, and they lived right on the creek, on a good hole of water. And he wanted to take us fishing to help celebrate his birthday. So Virgil Ward was the big television bass fisherman back then. He's looking at me like, who in the heck's Virgil Ward? But for guys my age, he was the pre-runner of fishing here in the Ozarks. And he came out with the Bass Buster Beetle Spin. Okay. And so my brother and I both had enough pop bottle money to go to the local. We didn't have Walmart yet back then. We had Otasco and Western Auto, and we bought. I remember getting a yellow Bass Buster Beetle Spin, and my brother bought the lime green model. And we both on our Zebco 202s caught probably 8 or 10 inch long smallmouth. And I can remember this day, the video just burns in my brain of that bass coming out from under a rock in that clear water and chasing it down and grabbing it, and I was hooked, and that was not, I catch fish, my parents tell me from, I was catching them by hand or sticking string or whatever, so fishing's been definitely in my DNA but that's the first burned in video that has created the passion for those and the love affair for those fish and the Ozark spring streams and that we have. So and it's never. People say, you've got one day left to fish. What are you going to choose? It's going to be an Ozark stream for me. Anyway, definitely.
You're not chasing the trout.
I love the trout, and I'd never get tired of them. It's a different game altogether. But if they took away the trout tomorrow and left me the smallmouth, I wouldn't cry too much.
Yeah.
But, so anyway, that's my passion.
Your childhood
It's in my
speaking to
blood.
something that I know that I experienced and Kyle has experienced, and is part of the reason we got excited. We grew up going to high school together, but then got really close in college, learned how to fish together, bow hunt together, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And it was just the magic of the woods and the outdoors and all, like just getting away from all of modern life and getting to be in nature is what's fueling a lot of even just the early idea of what would it look like to connect with other men and women who have the same passion.
Sure.
And I love hearing you speak on early childhood because that's something that we're hoping to even inspire for our generation as we're having kids and the next generation of, this is important. It's actually got so much value.
I've got some
being in the
beautiful
outdoor world.
grandbabies. I've got a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn. And the 2 older ones are girls. And but they just my wife and I just took them for a little 2-hour little perch jerking trip last weekend. And oh my goodness, the fun. And one of the little girls was swinging. They do fly fish some. I think it's a mistake to try to force your kid to learn, just a stick and string. Come on, teach them the bite, teach them how to entice a fish. So I rigged them up a long pole, at just about 6 feet of string on it, and a little hook and a bobber, and and the little 2-year-old was waving it back and forth so much, and because she had seen Daddy fly cast, she knows how to do it. And somehow in the process, we see this little 4-inch bluegill just going back and forth through the air. She didn't realize at the moment it hit the water, something actually grabbed it. She was just beating the water back and forth trying to make a cast.
That trout hook set.
Yeah, we had to stop her. Like, you actually caught one on your own.
You did it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sweet.
Flying fish. But kids are, and if there's any kind of in my voice of, we've got to take care of this landscape. I want my grandchildren to enjoy what I enjoyed. And I know it's different and I know it's shrinking, but it's still out there. We just have to be better stewards of it. So, my grandgirls are tough little hillbillies. Yeah. They go barefoot in the creek and they catch crawdads, and
that's a good way to grow up.
They know the bad snakes from the good snakes, and and it's just part of the outdoor experience and woodsmanship. We don't teach woodsmanship to kids much anymore. We take them hunting. We say, sit down, be quiet, be still. Yeah. Oh, wake up, put your Game Boy away. Here's a deer, shoot it, and that's it. And we have to be careful. That there's so much to learn out there, and that they need to expose themselves to, and all that. So anyway,
so talk to me about, before we move on, that topic, Cross Trail Outfitters.
Oh gosh,
I know you're the state director for Cross Trail Outfitters. That it sounds
that's
a lot
whole
like
show right there. But Cross Trail Outfitters, it's been 7 years ago now. I remember just in my spirit, just this uneasiness of seeing boys. Mainly in my church, but also my wife teaches school, and she would come home and tell me stories of, she said, man, if there's any way you could get involved in this young man's life, he has no one, and I would pick him up, take him fishing, and just see the turnaround in his behavior, his attention in school, but just his whole purpose in life. And we're a faith-based organization, and I just feel like, the sooner that kid can get himself settled on who he is in life and start working his plan, that he's intended to be, things go so much better for him. But they got to have somebody in their life, who taught you to hunt and fish? Obviously, it was somebody older, I imagine. You don't learn it on your own. So mentoring is so important, and it's so necessary today with the way the family is. I mean, I think it's 1 in 4 boys come from a broken home of some sort. Either grandparents are raising them, or it's a single mother situation or whatever. So Cross Trail Outfitters, and it's not just for that. People think, well, how's a kid qualify for that? It's just eat and breathe, okay? Because we love the mixture. We've got kids from every walk of life, but a large number of our boys in the program don't have anybody to take them. So that's where the mentoring comes in, and it's been, I can't give it up. It's growing, and it's amazing. I'd love to see chapters develop all throughout the state, but basically we do summer camps. I do a specific fly fishing camp because I love fly fishing and bow hunting because those are very skill building sports. So and they're passions of mine, so obviously I'm going to teach them, but there's only so much you can do to sit there and tell a kid to watch that red and white bobber until it goes under, okay? But in fly fishing, you bet. You're more of a participant. You got to think a little bit about the etymology. You got to understand the skill of casting and developing it, and it never gets old. You could, as soon as you think you're good, there's another species or another level that you can go to. I mean, I remember meeting Lee Wolf back in the day, and he was fishing hard, and then my mentor, Dave Whitlock, and I know everybody's name throws out there, but he is a very special man in my life.
Yeah.
And he's just turned 86, 87 years old, I guess, this year. And he still fishes actively.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of fly fishing. It never gets old. It'll carry you through life, And it's one of the few sports you can actually engage in from age 9 to 99, and I would say it's pretty true.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, Cross Trail Outfitters is amazing. It's an amazing organization. We rely totally on. We're a not-for-profit 501c3 and everything, but we've got some amazing people and companies out there that help us. We do quality. I mean, people open up their ranches in Texas and Oklahoma and here in Arkansas. We get to go on some amazing duck hunts. We get to go on. We get a little spoiled, but it's good.
That's awesome.
And
I wish I had known about this when I was growing up.
Where was this when I was growing up? Maybe I turned out halfway decent.
Do y'all have a Northwest Arkansas chapter?
We were trying hard. I've talked to people in Springdale, and it takes time. I'll be honest with you. It's a calling.
Sure.
If you're going to stay with it, and we want to make sure that you're fully funded to be able to do it. It costs. I was talking to one of my route partners the other day, and he's just asking, what are your needs? And I said, well, real dollars. I mean, we got companies, they'll send us every box of fly time material and rods and bullets and stuff like that. That's awesome, but just the gas money and the feeding these boys, and not everything's given to us. A lot of times we'll have to rent cabins. If we go somewhere, I do a big New Year's cast and blast every year. We do a quail, pheasant, and chucker hunt, and then a fly fishing a day. We do it over on the Spring River, and then we go up into Missouri to do that, and they love it. And it's our New Year's celebration, but it's expensive. But I had a gentleman up in Northwest Arkansas, John. I don't know if you want me to mention the name, but anyway, wonderful guy, and he underwrote the entire weekend for us.
Did he?
Isn't
really?
that amazing?
That is amazing.
People will step up and do stuff like that. It blows me away.
Yeah,
and it really lets me know how important it is, but also that caring people out there want to see boys and girls, and we're not just for we got to have women though to step up to teach the women.
Right,
that's how we do. So
that is so cool. We'll have to connect off mic a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm a youth pastor.
Awesome. There you go. You get it.
What do you call it? By trade.
Oh yeah. There you go.
So
okay. So I
love trying to intertwine outdoors.
I just
with
stopped
that,
at a Methodist church in Hinesville, Arkansas, on the way back. They were having a crawfish boil to raise money for their youth mission trips, and my wife and I said we love crawfish, and I left them some brochures. And I said, you guys need to. And so I expect them to call me at some point. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
That's cool.
But that's a whole show in itself. Man,
yeah, I mean, surely we could spend so much time on that.
We've got chapters all throughout, from North Carolina to Wisconsin down to Texas.
Okay, so it's not just the state of Arkansas.
No,
it's
no,
all
no.
over.
In fact, we're fairly new. I've just got it started here 7 years ago, and I've got 3 chapters now.
Gotcha.
And I'd love to see one in every section of the state. From the Delta to the Ouachitas, River Valley. You bet. It's
did you already say where the 3 are? Did you already say
one in Arkadelphia, and we have a second one here because we've grown so much. You can only provide quality stuff to a certain amount, and you really need to have another chapter go in. And so we have the White River chapter and the Buffalo River chapter here, and we have the Ouachita River chapter down in Arkadelphia.
Okay.
Really a great guy. Used to be a game warden. He's just Braden Gardner is his name, Brady Gardner, and he's an amazing hunter and outdoorsman, and brings all that knowledge with his passion for youth, and that's what it takes.
Man,
but it's a calling. It's
sure.
I won't lie to you. It does take some time, but it's worth it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Definitely.
That is so cool. Yeah, I'm sure we could talk about that for an entire episode.
Sure,
we'll have to come back.
We will. Yeah, we're not gonna cover everything we want to talk about today, but
I understand.
But I do want to. So let's get into the Rivertown Gallery. Obviously, this is your business. You mentioned you do a lot of different things, but how How did you get started with Rivertown Gallery? You mentioned
Sure.
you went to school, you studied
I do
fine
have
arts.
a degree in art education from the University of Central Arkansas.
Okay.
And upon graduation, I saw a job opening. I had 3 positions available to me. One is to be the art instructor at the Catholic Girls' School at Little Rock. And I went for the interview, and I'm like, okay, we'll look. I mean, nothing against that. It's like,
a little different.
and the other one was to be the art instructor at the women's prison. And I'm like, okay.
Also an interesting role.
Interesting role. I can just see myself being duct taped up in the corner. No, it would have been a great.
Yeah.
You probably have to edit all this. But anyway, the other was a job for a full-time art instructor at Mena Public Schools.
Okay.
And I thought, where in the heck is Mena? So my wife and I drove over there, and I mean, that is a beautiful, and it fit just perfect with me. It's not the Ozarks, it's the Ouachitas, but that whole Polk County area there with the Cossatot River and the Mountain Fork and just good people that are very tied to the environment and the land. And I thought, I can live here. So they hired me really immediately, and I started a great program there. Stayed there about 5 years and loved it, and really built a great art program for them. And I have young men back then. You talk about being mentors. I'd set up a fly tying station in my classroom, and during lunch breaks, boys would come in, and I would teach them to tie flies, and they didn't want to leave. They'd always be late to their next, or they'd try to fake it and get a pass, like we're working on an art project. And then I'd take them fishing later and stuff like that. So that mentoring thing has gone on for a long time in my life, and I've still got wonderful relationships with former students down there. That that barrier leaning up against was all because one of my former students had a great place down there and put me on that, and go down and fly fish on the Ouachita River and the Cossatot River with guys down there that are former students. And so that's a great thing to keep going. But anyway, so I taught school, but I was teaching fly fishing for Rich Mountain Community College, and then there's a store called the Woodsman in Fort Smith.
Okay.
And they just opened up, and they were an Orvis fly fishing store. And they came down and went to a fly fishing school that I was teaching at Rich Mountain College. And we got to know each other. And they said, we've been looking for somebody to kind of do this through our store. And I thought, okay, that's back then fly fish guiding. I think there was maybe 3 in the whole state that and there weren't any fly shops. Blue Ribbon had not opened up yet.
Yeah.
Up here with Dale Fulton and his vision for the White River and all that. Dave Whitlock was still up at LL Bean in Maine, so there wasn't a whole lot going on here. A little bit in Little Rock, the old Biomito store down in the Heights, okay? It was a pretty ritzy Orvis place, but the Hedges, Harold, his son, John Hedges, was the fly fishing brother. So, I just more and more I thought about it, I'm like, I love to teach, and I've got a great job here, and I'm not promised anything with this, but it sounds so good, I can't not do it. So I took a jump. My wife, she's like, I'll follow you anywhere you want to go, babe. Just I want the Lord to lead you, though.
Yeah, right.
make sure that it's right, because you do have responsibilities, and,
right.
But she's been so amazing, and she's a very active outdoors lady also. But so I went to Fort Smith, and we also they opened a second shop in Heber Springs, and I ran a guide service there. And that's when I met Rip Collins, and the World Record Brown came out of all that experience and everything there. But the Little Red was at that time prone to some horrible flooding. That's when Clinton flooded huge, and we got like 2 big years of just extreme water and mud coming through and all that. Yeah. And we about starved to death because I knew the 8 fly fishermen in the state of Arkansas that bought rods from me, and it was pretty much in its infancy in a lot of ways back then.
And do you remember what year that was?
That would have been 1994, probably.
Okay. And Rip Collins caught the big brown in 92, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it had to be before that. So probably about 1990. About 1990.
Gotcha.
Because I graduated from UCA in 1985, and I taught at Mena till like 89. And so it had probably been 1990.
Yeah. Okay.
But then, so the Woodsman said, "Well, come back into Fort Smith, and we're going to build a bigger store, and you can work out of the store here as a fly fishing pro, and then you can still guide and all." And so they hired me and my wife both, anyway. And then I do a lot of stuff on Lee Creek there. I do a lot of stuff over on the Illinois River in Oklahoma. but I'd still travel over here to the White River quite a bit, and still did a lot of fly fishing schools and clinics. Did a lot of smallmouth schools with Dave Whitlock back in the day. He and I would travel around, and so it was great. Really enjoyed it and all, but then it came a time to kind of move on from that. And so my art had always at that point been something I kind of did for clients. Like I'd guide somebody and they'd catch a nice fish, or they knew I did some art, so I'd paint a commission piece of a fish they caught, like a watercolor painting, or I'd do a scene of them fly fishing on a particular shoal or something like that, and that just kind of grew. I started doing a lot of travel trips, a lot of saltwater trips, bone fishing trips to some amazing. I was a travel agent for the Frontiers group, and so I went to Christmas Island way back in the day when it was just opening up. What an amazing experience!
Amazing things about that island.
Basically, you leave Los Angeles, you fly to Hawaii, you spend the night, and then you head towards Australia, and you take a left down there on a little horseshoe island in the middle of nowhere.
What?
The Republic of Kiribati, anyway, and very native people, very primitive, but amazing fishing. And so I did that a couple of years, and in the Bahamas and the Belize and the Yucatan. We used to do the Yucatan a lot back in the day, and literally stay on the beach in grass huts back before a lot of the lodges were built, and amazing bonefish and tarpon and permit and all that stuff. And so anyway, I got to do a lot of that travel fly fishing and everything, and did that and kind of funneled that business through the Woodsman and all that. But anyway, I wanted to go on and do my art, but. So I started putting stuff in galleries. I started entering shows. I won the first year I entered the Mid-Southern Watercolor Competition, which is a 9-state Southern, very prestigious show. I took best of show in that, and I'm like, kind of woke me up like, okay, well, maybe I...
Pretty good.
My peers think I'm okay at this, and it's just little by little, but nobody comes to your house and knocks on the door when you live way out in the country and say, I heard you were an artist. Do you have a bunch of paintings under the bed and in the closet so you can drag out and let us look at them? So you got to be out in the public eye. And so I thought, well, I'll open my own gallery. Most artists don't have their own gallery. But I was in other galleries, but they take huge commissions, and you're competing with a lot of other known artists and everything. And so... I started that, and that's been. We were down in downtown Cotter back in the day, where the fly shop, the Natural State Fly Shop, is now. That was my building. On that
corner right there.
Yeah. So all the traffic used to have to come right by my door. Plus, we had a tourist train that stopped there, so everybody had to get off the tourist train and walk up to the restaurant there and everything. So I was doing good. Yeah. But then they bypassed Cotter and they put the new bridge in, and Cotter just kind of became an afterthought and lost out, on a lot of that economic, and businesses weren't coming in or anything. It's great now, there have been wonderful people with some money and some futuristic mind to come in there and help it out. But so I was in Mountain Home, and then I found this place here, and this has been a good location. It's right on the traffic's good, and the business has been good. I've been very blessed. When this COVID thing hit, I thought, oh my gosh, I am, people are going to buy bread, milk, toilet paper, all those
essentials
things. Who is going to buy art? It's been the best 2 years. Not by a little bit, but by a huge amount. And I can't really explain it other than I talked to the manager at Lowe's, and he said the same thing. He said it's been our 2 best years.
Really?
And here's what it is that I can figure. Everybody here has a second home on the lake or river. And they're from Memphis, they're from Little Rock, they're from Kansas City, they're from everywhere.
Right.
They all holed up here during COVID. And they're like, hey, we're going to remodel, or we're going to change everything. And so then
they're stuck inside.
You bet, we had nothing to do, so here they come. And I mean, I would literally have customers come out with armloads to just totally redecorate. And
wow,
I'm blessed. I can't explain it. Don't want to even try. I just keep it going, But
that's awesome.
I can't afford a second home yet, but the whole time we were walking around in the studio, I was thinking, I want this in this room in the future. I know where this is going to get just beautiful.
But thank you. But again, it's passion. The scenes you see are places I've been, things I've witnessed, or clients that I've engaged into that place. This watercolor right over here, that's on Crooked Creek, a place where I turkey hunt. Okay. And it's just a view that I have from one of the fields where I am, and there's an old homestead back there sitting in a little clearing with an old rock fence, and it just kind of takes me back to that connection of the Ozarks 100 years ago, and the beauty and the simplicity of it. So anyway, that's But
Have you ever painted that moment that you were talking about, where that you were throwing the beetle spin bottle bug or whatever?
I've done I quickly advanced into, I say advanced, fly fishing's always intrigued me. Where did that come at? I can definitely remember, and I've had this conversation with Dave Whitlock. I was sitting in the Bergman Library and thumbing through Field and Stream magazines and seeing these pictures of these guys in the Rocky Mountains of Montana and Colorado and such. And I thought, that looks so cool. And then the flies that they made. And I think just being an artist, that really connected with me. So I had an uncle who was a school teacher in Michigan, so he had the summers off. And he would come down and stay with us in the Ozarks, and he was in love with the Buffalo River way back before it was a park. So I would more or less guide him, paddle the canoe, or he with me. And one year he brought this big, long fiberglass thing about as big around as a pool cue and a box of popping bugs and everything. And I thought, wow, how neat.
What is that?
Well, when he left, he gave me his old Boy Scout fly tying kit.
Okay.
And but the vise was not working at all. So my first vise was a clothespin with 3 or 4 rubber bands wrapped with a 16-penny nail through the hole in a 2x6 block. Anyway, but it held the hook anyway.
It works.
If there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, get the job done.
And then my dad later welded up a pair of vice grips onto a little metal thing, and that worked pretty good because I didn't know there weren't any fly shops, and it wasn't until college that I had an actual vise, and I was like, wow, I saved up money to go get a Thompson AA model, But so my parents bought me a fly rod, and so where you buy a fly rod in Arkansas I was born in 1962, so my 9th birthday about 1970 or something like that. Well, that's when the very second Walmart in the country opened up in Harrison, Arkansas. A lot of people don't know that's number 2 Walmart ever. Okay, and they had this long, shiny, metallic blue thing they called a fly rod anyway, and like I say, you could pole vault with it. But so they bought me that, and I got a little reel with it and a level line back then. Okay, I didn't have any weight forward lines, at least around here. So
you mean like it's not tapered or anything?
No.
It's just straight.
So you can imagine the casting loops I could throw with that. I had a young 9-year-old boy anyway out there in the lawn, but I whipped that thing and no instruction, But I was just bound and determined, and so that became my. And I still fished other ways, because I had an older brother I had to compete with, so I couldn't stand if he caught something bigger than me. So I'd flip a rock and get a Helgermite or catch a crawdad or whatever. But that's why it's so important, I think, to have that history that makes you a better fisherman. And then you can choose your method as you gain your head knowledge. There's so many people jump into fly fishing immediately in this day and age that don't have the background knowledge, and so. I'm going off on something else there, but anyway, there's a whole entomology and knowledge of a fish and all that you need to gain just by putting in the hours and the time and living on the stream and all that. So, but my fly fishing has stayed with me. It's I've fished every method you can imagine, probably from seining and gigging and whatever, but saying all that, my hillbilly roots coming out anyway. But,
I was about to say, I don't know what seining is.
Big long net anyway, and you drag it. We used to do that a lot, basically to catch bait. But that was a big thing, get a bunch of people and drag a seine across the stream. And
Gotcha.
It was always like you never knew what was going to be in the other end of it, a big gar or a snapping turtle or cottonmouth, whatever, whatever's in the whole water.
Right.
Yeah, you pull it up. But again, what an educational thing to go through and look at all the different varieties of minnows and darters.
See what's in there,
oh my gosh, yeah. And I do seining with the boys, just, catch and release anyway, as an educational thing, to show them all of the plethora of things that live within a stream and the food sources and all that. So
that actually reminds me, we had at our school when we were in 8th grade, we had a retreat when we went and seined the river.
Yeah.
At it was like Camp War Eagle or New Life Ranch over there.
Oh gosh.
And we were learning about
Spavinaw Creek.
Was it?
Yeah, it's the Spavinaw.
Is that the Spavinaw?
Well,
okay.
New Life Ranch is actually Flint Creek.
Oh, Flint Creek.
Flint Creek?
And I know this because that's where I met my wife.
Oh, really?
New Life Ranch. It all comes,
Oh,
I
that's
paddled the
amazing.
canoe up, and she was down on the bank, and she wanted to get in the canoe with me, and it's all been
Rest is history.
That's
an
that
awesome
was
story.
getting the canoe with me.
But yeah, we were over there and we were signing and we were seeing what was in there, and we were then at the end of the day we did a test and like, did you see a crawdad? What did you see this
awesome.
kind of algae?
Yeah.
And then you understood the health of the creek
bet.
and is it okay? What else did you see? And you kind of do some
You
observations
bet.
and doing that, you learn so much.
A lot of the schools are doing that through the Game and Fish Commission. It's called the Stream Team and the Water Education Program.
Okay.
And hopefully they're still funding that, because that was an amazing eye-opener to kids, as to the health of their local waters, and why it's important to keep them that way. So
yeah,
it's a great program.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
So you were talking, we're getting into where kind of Rivertown Gallery and fly fishing kind of meet.
Well, my passions, again, have always been, some people say, am I a fly fisher who paints or a painter who fly fishes?
Right.
And I don't think you can separate the two with me. Most of my subject matter revolves around, obviously, that. The more and more I grew in fly fishing, it just opened so many doors for me, which also allowed for my art to develop. And in 1987, I got a chance to paint. I was asked to paint the state trout stamp, and I've got the original of it back in the office there anyway.
Yeah, we'll have to see that.
Yeah, and so that was another feather in the cap. It kind of just won a few other awards along the way. Just different things. My clientele, I've had some pretty, I remember when they filmed Tuskegee Airmen here in Arkansas, the cast and crew and all, I took them on a guided fly fishing trip, and they bought quite a few pieces of art too, and I've had other, some different celebrity people, there's some pretty well-known folks out there, if I named them anyway, that have bought and collected a lot of my art. One of the big restaurant chain owners has a huge log home in the Smoky Mountains, anyway, one of his many homes, but he commissioned me to do about 10 paintings for that house of his, and
just covered the walls with your stuff.
Yeah, and so I've got a certain following out there, but it's I can't not paint. Okay, it builds in me, and my best paintings come from moments and interest. The worst thing is for somebody just to call me up and say, "Hey, I want you to paint me something." I can do that, but that's work.
Yeah.
For me, the passion and the something that comes out in it is from the experience or the way the light caught that particular pool of water that day, or the particular colors on that particular fish. I don't know. Artists are weird people, I know. But
this all seems like it flows through you versus someone saying, "I want you to paint this picture that I took," and it's what I want.
I seldom. I will do commissions because obviously I got to pay the bills.
Sure, yeah.
But same time and I probably just ruined my commission sales here. I think most artists would agree with that.
It's just different. I get it.
You bet. If it's a passion and something that, and I'm working on 2 or 3 commissions now, and again, they're working out well because there's subject matters that I can identify with, and the more I talk with the person and all, it kind of builds up that passion in there to do good work on it. So,
and you can add, I think too, you can add your own flavor, your own influence based on your own experience. I think that's how, like, as an artist who's a fly fisherman, or like you said, the other way, you're a fly fisherman who's an artist, you get to see things from a completely different perspective. Whereas someone who's an artist who didn't grow up in the outdoors, they may come to the Buffalo and see, wow, look at these bluffs, look at this river, look at the scenery. But they may not see it from the same perspective and get to capture every little detail.
I think, again, you paint best what you know and what you have a passion for, and that's what comes out of me.
Yeah.
You pointed us earlier to the watercolor overlooking the hill to the turkey spot you hunted with the old farm, and as you were explaining that, I was thinking through how cool is that is. It could be photography, right? It could be that you bring a camera and you take a picture of a spot, but instead you're capturing the true form and the memory and the experience and the feeling of what's happening in the art. So it's actually looking at it through the artist's eye is so much more valuable.
It's an interpretation of it's obviously a literal would be to take a photo of it and all, and I do a fair amount of plein air painting where I actually go and set up there at the spot, and that's the purest form of capturing the light in that moment. It takes a lot of discipline to do, and I go through stages where I plein air paint a lot, and then I'll come back into the studio and all that. But again, my best paintings. See, I live 37 miles from here. Okay,
really?
So I make a pretty good drive, and a lot of times I purposely take the old river road. Which takes a good 10 minutes longer, but I'm scouting turkeys, or I'm just looking at the bluffs and the water and everything. And I'm so full of ideas and inspiration by the time I get here, and it's like I can't wait to bust through the door to grab a canvas and start painting. And a lot of times I'll come in early before we open all just to get something started.
Yeah.
And I'm just almost trembling with excitement to capture. But if I wait a day or two, it's gone.
Yeah.
You know, so I've got to be immediate in my response to get my best work out.
Gotcha.
And that takes a little juggling. You know, I have a very strong work ethic. I remember in college, the professor one time, it's come time for our senior review and a senior show, and you had to have so many paintings submitted, and a lot of people would procrastinate and wait and paint them all and they would just get bad marks from the professors and stuff. And so he was bragging on myself, and there's another gentleman, an older student, who had come back to get his degree, and he had like 3 kids and everything, and I was my senior year, and there was a few of us that had some good work, and the professors were really bragging on us, and they were using us as examples. Some of the other students, I think, kind of to shame them a little bit. And he said, so what inspires you? Because he said, a lot of these students are giving excuses like, well, I'm just not inspired. And this older student, he says, every morning I wake up and I sit there at that breakfast table and look at those 3 hungry children and my wife, and he said, I'm inspired. He said, I just laughed at that. That was, you know, he said, I got to get out and get something done and sell a painting.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the artist's answer, but it's reality.
So I'll never forget that. I thought that was funny. They laughed at it. I said, that would be some inspiration anyway. But again, being in touch with a subject matter that fuels that energy is the secret. If there is, it's what drives it. You know, if I was to, nothing against dog painters, but if I, you know, I'd be like, oh boy, you know. You know, I get people come in all the time like, would you paint portraits of my grandkids? And I'm like, I'm sure they're lovely and wonderful, but no. You know, because you know your grandkids very close, and if I get one eyelash off, you know, you're going to know it. I won't know it, and I don't know your grandkids. So, you know, I could probably technically do a pretty good representation of them, but it would have no passion or feeling in it, you know, because it's what makes good art, you know, separate from just technical art.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah,
anyway.
That does make sense.
Try to capture your soul and the moment in there if you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, looking around at all the art, from the untrained eye, even, I mean, I get the feeling. I get the sense of the inspiration.
Good.
And I'm a person who also operates out of, like, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it because I really care about it.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to do it if I don't care about it.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
I can see it in the paintings, and it's
Well,
what I think separates it from just.
That's a huge compliment. And I don't want to downplay people's ignorance towards art, but people come in like, oh, that looks just like a photograph. And I'm like, that's the worst compliment you could give to an artist, you know? And I know what they're saying, that you captured the details and everything in there very well, but if it didn't capture the feeling and the mood and all that, then yeah, you might as well just take a photograph.
Right.
You know? So,
yeah, that's true.
But anyway.
I'll ask you a question on the flip side of kind of what we just talked about. Obviously, your passions as a fly fisherman influence your art. How does the way that you create art and being an artist influence the way that you fish and you pursue like wildlife and the landscape and fly fishing? And does it affect that?
Well, that's probably why I choose fly fishing over other methods, because there is a great aesthetic, but it also makes you you have to be an observant. To be a successful fly fisher, you have to be part of the stream. You have to be part of the environment. I boat fish some by necessity, but my preference is to get, you know, knee deep into the water and stalk fish, okay? And I love clear water. I love to sight fish. I love to read a fish, whether it's a rising brown trout sipping little, you know, stoneflies or something off the surface, or usually they don't sip them, they smash them on the stoneflies. But anyway, you get the idea there. I kind of figure out what the fish is doing, and then you become that, you're just another arm of the nature role there of the predator, but you're doing it not necessarily to eat that fish, but to fool him. And also it's a thinking man's game. You know, nothing against somebody that wants to throw a lure or whatever, but I mean, that crankbait has a certain built-in action, and all you're doing is winding the reel,
Right,
okay?
sure.
I've got a friend, I pick on him a lot because he likes to spin fish, and we fish together, and he usually kicks my butt. He's very good at it. And I'm like, how long are you going to stay in the third grade? Is what I say. I mean, when are you going to advance? And then he holds up a 20-inch smallmouth, like, when are you going to catch one of these?
Yeah,
So,
okay, touche.
Yeah. But there's I think we fish for different reasons. I've caught a lot of fish. I've been very successful with it. So I'm beyond just going out and spanking numbers of stockers and that type of thing. So I think you evolve, and fly fishing lets you evolve even more so mentally. But it compasses everything about your why you fish. Okay, because you can't be out there and not be observant of the water and the hatch that's coming off, or spotting fish, or reading the water. All of those elements are stronger in fly fishing than other methods.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know we get kind of picked on and touted as elitists in this, and I'm like, you can't come from a poorer background than I did. And I got a fly rod when I was 9 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. Sacrificed my mom and dad to probably spend a total of $20 to get it, but for them back then, that was a big deal.
That's a lot, yeah.
But And I get kids into it all the time, and I give them used rods, or we'll go to everywhere. Cortland Company makes a pretty darn good fly rod nowadays that you can buy at Walmart, and it will do the job,
Yeah.
And so there's no reason, this elitist, sure, just like with shotguns or anything, you can go spin the bank, but it's not going to make you a better shot,
No.
and the fly rod's not going to make you a better fisher if you don't have control over it. Master your cast and learn how to read water, how to be a fish head, and I mean, you get around, you guys, I can tell, you know fish, and being around and fishing with somebody who has those kind of skills is watching something beautiful take place, on how they read the water. It's like almost their magic. They can go and find fish. Not that we're always, people ask me, are there ever days you get skunked? Well, sure. They're few and far between, not trying to sound ego or whatever, because I pick when I go. I know where I'm going. I know how to fish. I know how to find fish. And I'm successful at it because I want to be successful. To me, fishing is not a passive thing of like, I got to bring my lawn chair, my cooler, and throw my feet up. For some people, and if that's okay, that's okay.
Right.
But for us that pursue fly fishing, it's much more that we're part of the entire total role. And so I think the satisfaction level I get, I've been with people that have caught, I can remember floating, and again, I sound like I'm name dropping, but he's just an amazing mentor in my life, is Dave Whitlock. And he came over and we floated Crooked Creek one day. He needed to get some photos for a magazine of hopefully some good sized smallmouth, but he was working on a carp issue. And I do a lot of carp fly fishing, he does too, and we'd think Dave Whitlock and Duane Hada could catch some carp.
You would think.
Oh, we got our butts handed to us. I
Did you really?
we could not, And so about 2/3 of the way through the day, he's like, let's just give up on these carp. Well, he brought a little brand new, I think it was one of the new Ott weights made back then, and tied on a little red fox squirrel nymph, and started catching 6-inch long ears the rest of the day and giggling like a little school kid, And I'm like, here you are, an 80-year-old man, and I saw the passion. See, he's an artist too. He gets it. And I saw the passion in him of every long ear he would look at and marvel at the colors and the fighting ability. I'm like, it just totally like blew me away, because it gave me like, I want to be that at 80-something years old, where the passion is still strong. And I never grow old. I call long ears the brook trout of the southern waters. They're kind of like that.
They eat everything.
Well, and they're beautiful. In every stream, I'm learning this as I become more observant. Every watershed will have a certain color pattern in their long ears.
Okay.
Tell me if I'm wrong. You go fish a Spring Creek in Oklahoma versus one in the Ouachita's versus there, and take pictures of them and look at them and lay them out. They all have their own identifying, same species in all of the long-eared sunfish, but just the watershed and whatever, they're unique, and that's beautiful. And most people don't even get it. They're like, it's a little trashy perch, they call them. I love to mess with Texans, I said, you all don't have perch. Oh, we got, no, you don't have perch. You have a species of sunfish either bluegills or long ears or green sunfish,
Right.
And like, no, we're perch.
No, it's perch, man. What are you talking about?
You're speaking to, you're putting language to something that Kyle and I talk about all the time. And we haven't either lived the life or have the maturity yet to put perfect language to it yet, but just
you're getting there.
The aesthetic, the total, you're totally in a different world if you're in the river, in the woods, which is even why we're fly fishing and we're bow hunting. And we can maybe catch more or shoot bigger deer, whatever it may be the other method, but it's something about being completely given over to the chase and completely just kind of engulfed in what you're trying to do. And that's why I love coming over here and being on the bank or being in a boat floating down the river, and you're in all of it. And it's every step of the way, from rigging the rod to pulling in that first fish you catch. It's just it's beautiful. It's magic.
It's fun. It is. Yeah. And I want to say too, just thinking about it's a 2.5 hour drive over here, but I'd do it every weekend just to come try to figure out this river.
And we talk about fish the whole way up.
The whole way. And it's so dynamic, and there's so many things you can learn, and you can come out one day and you get skunked, and it doesn't discourage you. It actually makes you want to figure out what you could have done. And just to even as we pulled up and you came outside and we were talking to you, I could tell right away, obviously I know you're a fly fishing expert. You've been doing it for a long time.
Still learning.
But just the way that you talked about, skipping the caddis across and the way you line up and you capture the whole life cycle of the caddis in the way you present your flies and you do the droppers. And I mean, I can tell just from talking to you in the first 5 seconds talking to you, you're a fishy guy. And I was listening to a podcast actually of Chad Johnson on another podcast, and he was talking about Dave Whitlock, and he was like, man, Dave Whitlock is a fishy dude. And
we owe such that's my thing with the younger generation of fly fishers. That man, our sport, my goodness, we would be in the dark ages. Literally every technique, every fly pattern, not just him, but mostly him, okay? Mm-hmm. The influence, the strength, the knowledge, the genius. I mean,
it really is.
I watch him draw, and the man, his line work is perfect. It just flows, and that just can't happen without something deep within that.
Yeah, absolutely. We need a pause.
No, he's one of my volunteers anyway, and so
got somebody coming in.
Somebody coming in.
I guided for a year at a kind of a private stream in Oklahoma, and the guy who owned it, he was mentored by Lefty Cray for a while. You mentioned him a little bit. He was one of his, he was in his wedding kind of thing.
Wow.
And they were,
Very cool.
He was the old guy in the wedding, but he's still in the wedding. They were really cloose, and similar story, mentor, that kind of thing. And
is that on Spavinaw Creek?
It is.
I know. I've
Spring Valley.
Bonner, the old original Carl Bonner, wasn't it? Yeah. See, he interviewed my wife and I. We were going to move up there and do that way back in the day before the other group, I guess you were with, had that.
Yeah.
I fished that. See, Dave Whitlock did original brown trout plantings in there. A lot of people don't know that. And it was successful. They just couldn't get any management on it, but that's a beautiful piece of water.
It is. And my parting gift from them from that year was as a Dave Whitlock original. So I have that. And you kept talking about him. I don't know his name super well, but I'm like, I know I have a drawing of his in my house.
That is way cool.
Yeah. So he's one of your mentors.
Definitely.
And we can kind of talk a little bit too about mentorship, because I know obviously you've had mentors, but also you mentor a lot of people too with the programs you're in, but you are also the coach of the U.S. youth fly fishing team.
I got a chance to do that. The adults have had a team back then in that day for a fair number of years. They've never done well in world competition. There's reasons for it. I think the main one, most countries, their fly fishing teams are literally the 6 best qualified men to form that team, and it's a huge pride. It's kind of like fishing the Bassmasters Classic here.
Okay.
You have to win on this round and this round and this round. So when you get down to their final 6 team members, they are literally the best 6.
You're the real deal.
Here in the U.S., not trying to pick on them, but back then it was like, oh, you are president of such and such a company and you donated X number of dollars, you can be on the team.
Can be on,
okay, well, that's not necessarily meaning you're the best fly fisher. And So it's over in those countries, they are super competitive and they fish for pride of country and for their flag and all. Here we're just like, it's a good time.
It's fun.
And we're not, fly fishing is not the competitive sport here like it is in the European countries.
Sure, yeah.
So when they asked me if I would, because I think no one really wanted to do it. And I'm like, well, this sounds interesting. They said, well, don't get your hopes up. I said, the adult team's never done very well, and just don't embarrass us and blah blah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to win this thing.
Yeah.
I like, and they're like, yeah, right. And I'm like, I said, you go raise the money. Let me work on finding the team, and they agreed to do that. So I worked with John Wilson, who's with the Cortland Line Company back then, and Davey Watton had just moved to the United States.
Okay, yeah.
And the first year, the host country was the country of Wales. And I'm like, Dave Whitlock said, you get Davey Watton.
Yeah.
He knows. And I'm like, okay. So that's where I met Davey, and we developed our, I get a lot of credit on this, and I did a great job with it, but I had good people, obviously, Davey Watton being one of the main ones there, to help teach us the European technique. Because, you think, well, I'll just go over and throw an olive woolly bugger and just spank them. Good luck.
Yeah, not going to happen.
It's amazing how different waters in different places, there's a home technique that is dialed into that works. And if you're not dialed into it, you can go fishless. So anyway, we did a lot of that. But I went around the country and to try to find, seriously, the 6 best young men in that 14 to 17-year age group that grew up fishing, sons of guides and that type of thing, that had a passion for it, that were known in their community as this guy is fishy.
Yeah.
And I found those boys, and we started and then Dave Whitlock developed, he came over here and worked with our team and just getting their skill levels up. And then, of all things, I did a handwritten letter to, of all people, Ted Turner. Saying, hey, the Vermejo Ranch would be an excellent place for us to come and practice on. Would you be interested in hosting the U.S. team? And he, through his land manager and all, David Vacker, anyway, wrote me back and everything, said, we would love to have you, and we'll host you for 2 free weeks and all expense and everything. And so I got, you talk about amazing stuff, to go out and stay at the Vermejo Ranch. But they have these big windswept lakes up there on the high mountains, which were very much like the lakes that we would be fishing over in Wales. So we got to practice on those. And
Gotcha.
then there were other people in Colorado that hosted us for stream fishing and all, where we learned the check nymph technique, which back then here in the United States, nobody was doing that. We learned that and mastered that for fishing over there.
Yeah.
So we go over there, but my Ben Levin, you know him, okay, he was one of my teammates that I picked. I found a young Native American guy, Norman Mactama. He's a Hopi Indian. Yeah. This guy, he runs Real Life Outfitters now in Santa Fe. Okay. Guides out there. All these boys are very successful now, still in the fly fishing industry, running guide services and all this kind of thing. It's amazing. But I got to coach those guys and be with them and watch them develop. But here's the thing. I got it in their heads that they could win. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I set that standard. Guys, I said, I have no idea what we're going up against, but, and we got over there.
We're going to go try to win this thing.
You betcha. Norman was the individual gold medalist. His individual score was higher than both of the 2 Canadian teams' totals. Wow. That's how on fire he was.
Oh, my gosh. What is the scoring? I don't.
The scoring is based on you have to catch a certain size fish for it to actually measure to qualify. Okay. Then if it's over a certain size, you get bonus points. So as a coach, I could be out in the water, like on the stream. Yeah. They caught a fish. I had a measuring tube, and then I had one of it's kind of like a golf tournament. They divide the stream up into beats. You have flags. And when they say you can start, you have a 45-minute fishing session between flag A and flag B, or flag 1 and 2, okay? And the stream's divided into equal number of sections, all the same. So you rotate so everybody fishes the same spot of the stream the same amount of time. Okay. So it's not like, well, he had a better spot than I did. Right. So you rotate, and then you have a 15-minute break between each one. Then the bank is like at a golf tournament. I mean, it was like watching Tiger Woods, at his first. They were all swarmed. You talk about being nervous because Norman was so spot on. I mean, they weren't watching anybody. I look behind me and there's this galley of photographers and people from the press taking notes and everything. And like, Norman, don't look, just fish, buddy.
Keep looking straight ahead.
He was fishing that caddis dropper rig I was talking about.
Yeah.
Twice in the tournament, he caught doubles and landed the doubles.
Oh my goodness!
To keep 2 browns on that are good size at the same time and get them under the net. And my job out there was I had to slide them into this tube so that the score master could come, and he had to wait out there. And they're all about keeping the fish live and healthy and all. And so he had to come out, and I pressed the fin down to get it as long as I could get it.
Sure.
Step on him. No. Anyway.
And so he would, boy, you came out there.
We got all my tricks, jerking their vertebrae. No. Anyway, so he'd come out and write down, we'd both agree, like it's so many centimeters and everything, and he'd mark it on the scorecard, and then we'd turn the fish loose, and Norman would go back out, and then so we were ahead and everybody was blown away. They're like, the American team? Oh no, that can't be, and because they had never done well in world competition before, and so the second day was we have a lake day and then you have a river day of competition.
Okay, cool.
And the Czech Republic were in number 2, and they came through and beat us by just a little bit. But that's no disgrace. Those Czech kids they're rough and tough.
Really?
And they're fishermen. And they have they invented the Czech nymphing technique, and they just came alive on that last day and rallied around and beat us. And their adult team always wins. Poland and the Czech are 2 strong teams.
And that was on the lake the second day?
We were on the lake and they were on the river.
Okay.
And the lake was not necessarily our strongest, but we did well anyway. But we got narrowed out for the gold medal. We got the silver. And at the awards banquet, which can you imagine, 18 different countries. Okay, it was the Olympics. Okay, and we were all gathered around, and we had the big banquet. And I'm sitting next to the coach at the awards deal, and in his broken English, I was congratulating everything. And I said, "You guys have always been good." And I said, "You came back and deservedly you wanted it and you beat us." And I said, "What makes you guys consistently so good?" And without hesitation, he looked at me and goes, "In our country, we fish for food." I'm like, that would make a difference. That makes a difference.
That make you a lot better angler.
But those kids from the Czech Republic, I mean, they would have fly rods. Literally, one boy, that was one of their star anglers, had a rod that was 2 different colors. Obviously, 2 broken sections put together and had duct tape in the middle of it. Waders with patches all over them, people that, they had to raise money and get help to even be there.
Yeah.
And I told my boys, because we were just spoiled rotten. I mean, we would have our Orvis day. I'm like, okay, today we have to represent Orvis. Everybody wear your Orvis stuff. Tomorrow it's all Columbia, and I mean, we were just lavish, like, you want to use your Sage rod or your Orvis rod or your Winston rod, So I said, look, you guys keep what you want as mementos and prizes because you deserved it.
Yeah.
But I said, you look at who beat us and what they beat us with. And I said, what an awesome deal. Go over there. They'll never get a Sage rod. And I mean, the world was at peace, at that moment there. I mean, those kids, giving them stuff like that. And they would trade the pins, country flags. And, it was just, it was amazing. I'm getting kind of emotional about it because it was just a beautiful celebration of the cultures and the world and the fly fishing and our boys were glad to give them stuff and I still correspond with some of the team members and coaches from Wales and from Ireland and Czech Republic, and just like we'll never forget that. Wasn't that a beautiful event? Wasn't that a great time and everything? And it was just and they've still go on with the program, and I don't know who's doing it today.
Okay.
I know we are much more competitive now than we have been. The adult team finally got their act together, and I think they're pretty savvy team to deal with anyway, and all. But competitive fly fishing is kind of an ugly word here in the States compared to what it is over there. But most of their quality, as Davey Wanton tells me, they would not have quality fishing if it wasn't for the competitions and the clubs, because they are the stewards and the managers of their home waters.
Gotcha.
Okay, so
That makes
that's
sense.
what creates their good fishing.
Okay.
And it's a pay-to-play thing. It's I remember on the airplane over there and had all the boys, and this lady from, she was from England anyway, and she said, "These boys are fly fishers?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, in our country, only the very wealthiest, and the lords and, and
the dukes.
And she was like, she was impressed, but also like, how can they manage to, and I didn't understand until I got over there. But, if you want to go fish a quality water, you pay a fee, beat fee, and you go to a clubhouse and you check the books and with the river gilly, and he tells you, well, you can fish on this section today, and it'll cost you 40 pounds or whatever. It was average
That's
about.
So different.
It is different. So we're so blessed here to have, quality public waters, and all that kind of thing. But they have good fishing over there, but it's totally different. It's like playing golf here. You go to a golf course, you got to pay the green fees and see what's available and open and all that kind of thing, and you can be a member of the club, and then you get special dates and privileges and certain sections of water only for club members and that kind of thing. So it's different, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, their big common fishing over there is coarse fishing, fishing for carp and roach, which is brim.
Yeah.
A totally different, big guppy-looking minnow thing. That they have tournaments, and they're so technical on catching carp over there. They say you can't even put the bait on the hook now because the carp can smell it. They run almost like a horsehair thread, like 2-pound test, and needle thread the baits up on that, and then leave a floating hook. They say if you put the bait in the hook, they'll refuse it. And I'm like, it's gotten. I mean, it's crazy. They put little timers and bells on their rods and little.
So they're actually putting the bait up on the line to have a floating hook.
Yeah. So when he sucks it through.
Wow.
Those guys you talk about, they are so technical about it and all, and they have big course fishing tournaments. It was fun to watch anyway.
Man.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
It's different,
That's the whole experience, though, of getting to go over to Wales and even the
With
moment.
Ireland in the next year anyway.
Oh, okay. So you did it 2 years?
I did.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, man, that just sounds so cool
It was.
And to think about, too, like, a guy from, small town in Arkansas getting to travel all over the world to do these things and, talk with
that
people.
old blue fly rod took me a lot of money.
It took you a long way, man. We actually did a fun thing the other day. We bought a little $40 Ozark trail fly rod from Walmart. Just to kind of prove the point that you doesn't have to be an elitist thing. You can go catch. We caught a bunch of sunfish and bluegill, and it's just a good time.
You bet it is. I can't. Most people, once they experience fly fishing and have a good experience, it's just second. I know. I don't know. You're suddenly fishing for a different reason, and a different purpose. I tell people I'm really not fishing for food anymore. I seldom I'm not against harvesting a fish to eat if it's the right kind of fish, right circumstance, and all that.
Right.
I think that's your right, and I think you should do that. I kind of question somebody who's never taken a fish and knows how to clean it, prepare it, make an excellent meal to honor that fish out of. Okay, that's part of the game. But I choose to catch and release from a conservation standpoint, but also it's just part of the catch and release fly fishing ethic and all that keeps good numbers and all that kind of thing out there. But having said all that, there is so much more, I think, in the experience of fly fishing that you do not get in other types of fishing. And I know I tell people, at least try it. Learn something new. Learn something new. That's what's exciting in life to me and that's why fly fishing never gets old to me, is because there's always, you think you're good, there's another species, there's another water, there's another technique, there's another level of it. You can never say I've mastered it. You're just growing. You're going into that next level. I've tarpon fishing. I got to take my son-in-law here this last year on his first tarpon trip, and just watch him excel at it. And from never having caught a saltwater fish to literally catching and just watching him and making graceful casts and working the fish and jumping a fish, losing a fish, but you're going to lose a lot of tarpon. But his hook up to landing ratio was the highest of the group, because he's a real fishy person, And to watch him carry on, and then to my grandgirls, to see them just in the fishing, that's the passing it on. That's the legacy that you want to leave as a fisherman and as an outdoorsman and as a conservationist, because we've got it's important. It's of most importance. So
absolutely.
You bet.
You talked about always learning something new, always being able to learn a new species or new water.
Yeah.
And it made me think of you a couple years ago, I don't know when it was, the Master Anglers Award that you were awarded for catching every qualifying fish on fly tackle.
It's been a while back.
What was that?
That was Greg Patterson with the Game and Fish Commission. The Game and Fish started the Master Angler Award, and they made a list of certain weights that a fish has to be minimum in order to qualify for that. Well, I'd caught a 12-pound something brown trout on a fly rod, and then I caught at that time my personal best largemouth of 9-pound 3-ounce largemouth.
Jeez.
And then I caught a 3-pound 8-ounce smallmouth out of the Washita River. And Greg Patterson was writing a lot for the Game and Fish magazine. He said, "Man, those all qualify for Master Angler fish." And I'm like, "Well, what's that?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, for most people, it's like a fish of the lifetime." And he says, "You caught 3 of them in this, like in a month or 2." And I'm like, "Well, yeah."
That's pretty good.
I know it sounds ego and all, but I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, he said, "I got to do a story."
Yeah.
He said, "How many more do you think you could catch?" And I'm like, "Okay." And so I looked at the list, and some of them are, I knew the striper just because of my proximity to good striper fishing, and some of them are more easier to catch. It seems like the size ratio to the species and all is more doable.
Just more of an average.
Yeah.
Average
So
fish.
I picked out. I think it was. I think 10 of those fish. And he said, "I'm going to do a story in November. Do you think you can have all those fish caught by November?" And he said they have to be
a deadline.
They have to be legit, and I didn't want to do it if it wasn't legit, you know. And so witnesses and photos and links and measurements and everything. And so I took on the challenge and I did it.
Yeah.
And so I caught all of them on a fly rod, which again just blew everybody away.
Nobody had done.
That's how I fish, I mean, that's my method. I could have caught them on a spinning rod, I guess. I could have caught them on a bait caster or whatever.
Yeah.
Jug lines. That doesn't qualify. Okay? But anyway, so they were all legitimate, but I targeted, that was a fun thing to do, and I targeted each one, and he got a great story out of it, and I kind of launched the Master Angler program through his article, and it made me look real good as a fisherman and all, but to guys who are active fishermen, and all, and set goals towards that, I mean, it's a doable thing. I just made it a goal and we went after it, and so I've gotten a lot of notoriety and press out of it, I guess, and everything.
Yeah.
And it is quite an accomplishment.
No,
I'm not trying to downplay it, but I just set my mind that I'm going to do this. And I remember catching the gar. That was one of the last ones anyway. I mean, he was a huge gar, and that thing jumped like a tarpon.
Oh my God!
So, and I'd lost 2 before that, and I'm like, I'll never land one of these wrestles because they're hard, unless you rig specifically for gar.
Yeah.
And I just happened to be on a float trip, smallmouth fishing, so I didn't have a lot of my normal gar stuff, and I ran into a pod of really big gar, and they'll clip off a clouser quicker than anything if you hook them wrong.
Did you have a steel leader or anything?
Did not. So I got lucky and got the one. I mean, there's a lot of fly exposed, but a lot of times they'll roll on it and they'll get that line up over the...
Break it.
Yeah, and they'll break it. And, that whole mouth is just nothing but a saw blade, so it's one nick and it's gone. But anyway, I got lucky.
Yeah.
And he's a monster.
That is cool.
Yeah.
That is cool. One other thing that I wanted to mention, and I can't believe I didn't mention it at the beginning, but you're actually getting inducted into the Arkansas Game and Fish Hall of Fame in this upcoming August. Is that right?
That's what they tell me. And
what did they tell you for? What was that like, or what did they tell you why?
I was a little bit in disbelief. They actually showed up here at the gallery, the commissioner, Rob Finley, and had an official letter and all that. And, I've gone to their event and done artwork for them. That's another thing about my artwork. I feel like if I'm blessed with doing it, then that's something I can give. I totaled up one time for tax purposes the amount of giving, to conservation groups and everything, and I like that. If people value original art, I hate to give an original and it goes for the price of the frame. I'm
right?
Like,
yeah.
This is worth it. I'll buy it back and sell it out of the gallery. But it's as your name gets known and everything. I've raised some good serious money and everything through it. But anyway, he came in here and did all this proclamation and decree and official and everything, and actually showed up at my church and did a whole huge thing there, which I thought was way cool and everything. But anyway, Yes, humbled. I thought you had to be 80 years old and have donated, hundreds of thousands of dollars to the, and I think, I've accomplished a lot in the outdoors.
Absolutely.
I think I say that
It's okay to say
Well, I think more than anything, what probably caught their attention is my volunteer hours with youth. Okay, that is a big buzzword in are you giving back? Are you getting the next generation? If we don't get the next generation off the couch and off the Game Boys and off the phones and out in the woods, we've lost a lot. We may be out of business from a game fish standpoint, from a hunting and fishing industry standpoint, all those kind of things. So I think they actually asked me at one time to be part of that game and fish program, that Hunt Natural, to help, and I was very interested in it. It was going to be a paid position with the game and fish, but that was the same time that this calling for the CTO, here I am, okay, I'm going to do volunteer work, more hours than what I would get paid to do a program. Didn't make sense, but in my heart, it made perfect sense that I needed to do the CTO program, and so that's what won over for me and everything. But they understand that and I've been, my wife and I just sat down and listed the number of boys that have gone through our program, and we're just now getting these ones that came in at 11 and 12 years old, and they're at the age where they're marrying, and you look at their lives and you see they've got jobs, and they're successful, and they hunt and they fish, and they understand conservation, and we've done our job. We've put another person out there in the ranks that's working with us, that gets it and understands it, and is a participant and a good human being. He's just, we're proud of him, and that's, and I'm like, everybody should be doing this, in my opinion, and true conservationists are. So I think that probably caught a little bit of their, and then again, I've done my art, a lot of the big nature center things, and I don't ever say no. I mean, if people come and like, hey, we need a donation for, I've given original artwork to the fisheries fundraising thing, and for the fisheries division of Game and Fish, and various things, and we've worked in partnership a lot of times on various hunts and all. They're like, hey, we have a special hunt, and we don't have, sometimes they'll advertise a hunt, and they won't get any kids to sign up, or one or two. And they're like, they know they can call me, and I can have 10 boys like that show up, and are good kids. And they're like, we like that program. And not that they cater to us or anything. I just know that we've got serious boys who love the outdoors, and I've got a good program with good men that help me, and we're ready to roll. Yeah. We can get it done. We had the first bow hunt we did, we had 88% with first time my boys on a bow hunt. They did as a management hunt. That doesn't happen
88% of what?
Success rate.
Oh, really?
You bet. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Not out of 12 boys, I think whatever. I think
88%.
9 or 10 of them harvested a deer.
That's impressive.
With archery. One of them with traditional. Isn't that pretty cool?
That's cool. Even cooler.
Yeah.
That's hard to do.
I play real Indian a lot. I've got one of the neat things we do real quick is we used to go over to Oklahoma. We're a friend of the Chickasaw Nation, and I've got a great friend over there that is a Chickasaw Indian, and he builds bows. Osage bows, and naps his flint and everything. And he does a program for our boys, and we got to participate in the Five Civilized Tribes cornstalk shoot, something they've been doing for hundreds of years in Oklahoma. The Five Civilized Tribes will gather for a powwow type big homecoming, and the rules are you cannot shoot anything that you either didn't make or trade with somebody who made. Nothing store-bought. Now, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And here were men, women, and children lining up in this field shooting traditional bows at 100 yards at about like a square bale of hay of corn stalks out there, and that's what they use as a target.
Gotcha.
And everybody's feathers are colored and marked on their arrow for identification. And so here's a rain of 100 arrows going through the air. It's cool. And
Looks like one of those old war movies.
Oh, yeah. And I bet you probably 80% of them hit within 5 feet of that at 100 yards. And I was like, well, wonder we ever won any battles against these guys. And then they turn around, they shoot back 100 yards. And so they divide it like the first half that scored the closest shoots, and then that half, and it's down to 2 guys standing shoulder to shoulder. And when they shot at 100 yards, their fletchings touched at 100 yards.
Whoa.
No sights, just a bare bow with arrows they had made. And I'm like, wow. These guys hunt that way. And they make fun, I show up with a compound bow, and they're like, well, we don't have training wheels on our bows. You white man.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had them build me a boat arc, Osage bow, and arrows and everything. And I said, I shot 2 deer that year with it.
Did you really?
And I mean, that war hoop is still out there near somewhere. I mean, they were little yearlings, okay, about 65 pounds. I don't care. I mean, they were awesome. It was like a Boone and Crockett to me. I mean, I shot them off the ground from a kneeling position.
Off the ground?
Yes.
So cool.
I mean, and it wasn't easy. I mean, these were, true fair chase. But I set that goal, like I am going to harvest a deer with this bow, and I'd like to shoot a nice buck someday with it, and I will. And I practice up. My instinctive shooting skills have gotten better. I may want to attempt to take another Arkansas bear at some point, I don't know. It's kind of like fly fishing. The greater the challenge, the greater the reward. You feel like you really accomplished something, So
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I'm sure that you will achieve that. Sounds like when you put your mind to a goal, you usually knock it off the list. So I think that's awesome. And then just want to again say congratulations on the induction into the
I'm looking
Game and
forward to
Fish
it.
Hall of Fame.
It's humbling, but I'm in a great class of people, and just to know who has come before me in this and the legacy they've left to this great state and the great waters and conservation. I just hope that, I think, I did a lot back in the 90s for smallmouth bass. I was part of the smallmouth bass task force and helped write the regulations that we have that exist today, which personally I don't think they went quite as far as I pushed for.
Oh, okay.
I think a smallmouth bass is a symbol in Arkansas, in the Ouachitas and the Ozarks, where they're native of a true wild fish. Okay, we don't stock them for the most part. I mean, I know they have in some areas, but for the most part, when you catch a wild smallmouth bass, look around where you're at. You're in a very beautiful scenic place. They symbolize the wilderness of Arkansas, and they're an amazing game fish, and they require very strict elements to survive. Good, clean water. They can't live in pollution. Has to be of a certain temperature. Has to be of a certain, all these things. Okay.
Right.
And I think we need to elevate the status. They need to be taken off of the harvest list. There's plenty of fish we can harvest, and we should as a management tool. Stream smallmouth, I think they're getting better at it, but we've got a 1/18-inch limit in some areas. And they say, well, the majority of people who can catch smallmouth do practice catch and release, but locally here, there are guys that, like we've always done it this way, and we're always going to do it this way, and they're not going to fill out your survey, okay?
Right.
They're not going to contribute to the pool of information you're getting. So it only takes one or two guys fishing my home water holes, taking out stringers of fish to really upset the balance and ruin. People don't realize smallmouth, how long it takes to grow a fish of you catch a 20-inch stream Ozark smallmouth, you have caught a legend. You have caught a fish that is probably 15 years old minimum, okay? And people we need to preach that message more. Missouri does a very good job of educating their anglers, but they say it's still a problem up there too. But smallmouth bass in streams need to be elevated to a status of, it's kind of like maybe catching greenback Colorado cutthroats, okay?
Almost like an endangered species.
Yeah, or an
status.
Appalachian southern brook trout. This is a symbol very much of this particular watershed. You're here for the enjoyment experience of maybe catching one of these wonderful fish. This is not a food source, okay? There's other things, there's
so many other fish.
There is no need to harvest those fish, and the requirements they have for survival are very small, and they can easily be upset, just from flooding to gravel mining issues to pollution to otters. We're getting some huge issues with otters on our streams that, otters are cute and cuddly, and really they're not. They're not. You tie an otter and a bobcat together, that otter's going to whip his butt every day. I mean, they are vicious animals.
Yeah.
But I'm all about otters in the right place, but too many of them and unregulated, damage is done. I've watched them on the Buffalo River, literally just hole after hole, they're good at it too. And they love to eat smallmouth.
Yeah.
They just ate the
Tasty
suckers in the gar, I'd be okay with it. But
Yeah.
if you start messing with most smallmouth, we got some issues.
You get a little personal there.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Well, Duane, I appreciate your time so much. I can't thank you enough for having us here to the gallery and, man, just getting to see all your stuff and hearing you talk. It just, your passion comes through your words and obviously through your art and stuff like that. So,
That's been good.
Again, just wanted to say thank you so much. I'm sure we'll have you back on the podcast because I think we could sit here and talk to you another 3 hours, honestly.
I've never been lack for the gift of gab. But
Yeah.
I even want to do one where it's let's just talk catching smallmouth.
Yeah.
Let's just talk catching trout. And
tactics.
with all the years of experience and all the guys you've got. And I mean, we would learn more from that.
Honestly,
than,
yeah. We would
anybody
learn
who'd
so
even
much.
care to listen to us. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, we
So-
can't let the things that you've learned go away from the world.
Well, and I'm thrilled. I mean, there's the Keith Reeves taking on the fly tying skills and the smallmouth fishing. My son-in-law, Tad Four, is, his passion for smallmouth is huge and his skill. Ben Levin is just, he's like a son to me, I mean, he started guiding with me when he was 14 years old. His dad managed to give him a hardship license so he could drive, so he could guide. Who does that?
Yeah, cool.
And he is just an amazing fish head, and you don't want to fish behind him any day.
Yeah.
He's going to
Yeah.
milk the water out ahead of you. But I love seeing this younger generation. I guess if there's any tinge in my voice I tell them stories of how Crooked Creek used to be. I used to drive up to an access. If I knew the 3 other guys that might fish that, if they were there, I just pulled out and went somewhere else. I'm not going to follow them all day or try to cut them off or whatever. Now we've got huge parking lots and they're full, and it's different, and it's sad because even though the resource is still there and we are trying to manage it well, we have been found out here in the Ozarks, and I know we can't pull up the gates and say no more people. I'd like to say that, kind of in a way. But at the same time, if you're going to live here, get in with the rhythms of the Ozarks. Don't try to change it. Don't try to make it something it was never intended to be. But appreciate what we have. The people that live here and make their livelihoods from the woods and waters care about this and respect that and respect those things. And let's keep it good because that young generation deserves to, I don't want to tell my granddaughter we used to catch smallmouth out of this hole of water.
Right.
This used to be, I wish you could have experienced this when, I want that same quality to be there, and it can only be there if we take care of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great place to end. Well, again, thank you. It's been an absolute privilege. So for our audience, thank you guys for listening and tuning in. Let us know if you enjoyed the episode. And we'll keep trying to bring you great guests like Duane Hada. Thanks.
It's been fun. Thank you, guys.